Hey everyone. Um, as most of you know now, I have a collection that I refer to as the Robert Johnson Connection Collection. And basically, what this collection has been is try to find period pieces, music, personal mementos, anything that would bring us closer to the story of Robert Johnson as a person beyond the legend, of course, recognizing his skill and those that his musical talents would eventually come to influence long after he passed away in 1937. I wanted to take the time to show you this collection because I had it out, and I figured before I went to work putting everything back, I would kind of walk you through where I'm at. And so we'll start here. This is a reproduction. This is kind of what got me started. I was so intrigued by this. It's never been opened, but Vocalion put out a limited edition record that was a reproduction like you would have gotten from Robert Johnson back when he came out with these songs. And as you can see, this is Terraplane Blues, and then on the flip side, you have Kind-Hearted Woman Blues, and it tells you a little bit about the history. But I thought that was pretty neat. Of course, I haven't played it because it's unopened, and it's just one of the burdens of being a collector in this sense. But maybe I'll buy a copy one day to play. But it's made of the same material. It's exactly the way it would have been. This is a record, and I've got a lot of blues records, but this one is the soundtrack to the movie that got me started. Back in the early 90s, late 80s, that got me started on the story of Robert Johnson. By the way, speaking of Terraplane Blues, here is an original ad from 1936 out of a magazine for the Terraplane, which is what inspired Robert to write the song, which kind of compares the difficulties of working on the little idiosyncrasies of the Terraplane to a woman. I'll leave it at that. This is the stamp that came out in 1994. They released a set of blues legends, and Robert was recognized. His popularity was starting to come around again because of the re-release of his music. As you see, this was the date they first released the stamp. And so it's postmarked in Greenville, Mississippi, September 17th, 1994, the first date it was released. So it's pretty neat. Now, the unique thing about this is this individual is not tied to Robert Johnson or anything. But the key thing here is this is a postmarked letter that was in Dallas, June the 16th, 1937. Now, if you look up your Robert Johnson history, his second time recording, the last time, would be in Dallas. He would be arriving June the 17th, 1937. So this is just the day before, and they were having a Pan American festival, as they would call it, a expo. And so that's the significance here. Is that was a big deal, kind of like the World's Fair. Okay, coming over here, this is from San Antonio. This would have been the first time that he recorded. Of course, he recorded in the Alcazar Hotel. This is where Don Law stayed or had dinner one night when he got a call from Robert that he was in jail. But these are the matches as they would have been about the time that Robert stayed. Let me see if I can get them open here. And so it's an original matchbook from that period of time. As you see, they advertised that got 550 rooms and baths. Wow. This is kind of unrelated, but it's in Clarksdale. This is Alcazar Hotel. It's no longer there, but at the time it was a very well-known, popular travel destination. And Ike Turner was a bellboy here. He actually got his start at Alcazar. If I believe this was used on a Scroll Note Zipper album, I think. Don't hold me to that. So that's kind of an interesting thing. So it's this type of things we can't get that are directly related to Robert, but they would have been from the period. So, you know, what I try to do is is put the person in his shoes. What would you have seen? This is a postcard, an older, unused 1930s postcard, and this is for Greenwood, Mississippi. Now, those who are familiar with Greenwood will also know that this is believed most likely to be the final resting place of Robert. It is definitely from the period of time when he would have performed and been poisoned, as most people speculate, there in Greenwood. It was Baptist Town, so Baptist Town would have actually been before you got to this part of Howard Street. This is in a more affluent part. If you turned around and went the opposite direction towards the viewer, you would have been going back towards Baptist Town and where Robert is now buried. These are records, old records of people that were related to Robert. Sonny Boy Williamson was one that gives us a lot of the story and history of what was happening at that time, along with, of course, Son House. And also Honey Boy, not to be confused with Sonny Boy Williamson. Honey Boy Edwards was one that actually was probably the most able to tell us what transpired in the last days of Robert Johnson. Of course, he was friends with him. His sister dated Robert. This is Sonny Boy's autograph here from a night that they had, and Robert Lockwood was there, I believe. Yeah, there he is. So that's the kind of things. Any personal effects of those who can tell us the most about Robert. This, of course, is the album that introduced everyone to Robert Johnson, and that was released in the 60s. People would later go on to be influenced by Robert's music, such as Bo Diddley, who, introduced the world to rock and roll, as it's called. But you have to keep in mind, some of the music, like Preaching Blues, was done in 37 or before. So, by far, Robert Johnson was ahead of his time.